Sorry about this paper. When we started the car lab maybe 13 years ago, what happened is that, I don't know if I told you this story, I took the year 97, 98, took half a year off and visited at KPMG. And I spent that year basically designing the continuous auditing project for external audit, continuous auditing, external audit. The day I left the company back to Rutgers, they canceled the project. So a few weeks later, I ran into the guy there at KPMG that had research in an airplane. The poor guy had to sit next to me for the entire flight. And so I really gave him hell. I said, wow, I spent 6 months here working to cancel. And he said, well, you know what? The reason we canceled it because you have a piss off a client. This is the terminology. Apologize for the rudeness of it. And that's ridiculous. I work with many companies. I don't get people that are annoyed at me. But he said, if you find data, you'll fund your project. To give you money. And so I went and tried to buy, a couple of years later, I went and tried to buy a bankrupt.com to have their data. They accepted my $10,000 offer, and then the judge vetoed it. Said, no, you can't pass the data. So that was that. And then one day, without any warning, I get a phone call from HCA. And they say, we are under deferred prosecution. You know what deferred prosecution is? The Department of Justice say, you guys did a crime, but if I put an observer in there and you behave well and find out what the problems were, I won't prosecute. You know, it's a serious thing, it's criminal prosecution. So they agreed with that, and they needed R&D. And they said, we don't have any R&D, can you do R&D? I said, oh, of course I can do R&D, do you have data? But that's the first thing I asked them. And they said, we have more data than you can imagine. Okay, so I started working, didn't ask them for any money. I called KPMG up, and they were good. 3 weeks later, they funded us. And they just funded, and so I started the car lab. The 13th meeting of the car lab was this year in November. So it was 13 years ago. And for many years they gave me money. They said, I don't want to do continuous auditing, but I want to see what you guys are doing. And then a few years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, I can't remember, they said, no, we don't want to give you money anymore. We want you to do projects for us. And they wanted 3 projects. 2 projects really. They wanted first to find out how they were using technology. Second, they wanted to find out what other companies are doing in continuous audit. The guys, my contacts at that time there were the consulting guys. And the third one I invented. I said, let's do a prediction of what the future of audit is going to be. Because I thought, I really not a survey guy, I don't like to do surveys. But they wanted, and they were giving us money for so many years, I was willing to do it. And so I had at that time Sylvie Pan here and Sylvia Romero. She's at Montclair. Sylvie Pan is back in Thailand. Sylvie Pan did the predictive audit dissertation, published that paper, etc. And Sylvia is around, and we have published several things together. But so they wanted these surveys, and particularly the one of external audit. I was actually curious because I've seen the one that you mentioned, Randy, the KPMG study, but I had also seen a PwC study that said something like 65% of the companies are doing continuous audit.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't believe that, and so we decided to investigate, and because I hadn't seen companies doing continuous audit. So we chose 11 companies that were reduced to 9, and we are going to go and interview them. But now this is the methodology that you need to pay a little bit of attention to. And so the guys at KPMG that were working with us, two partners, worked on dividing a questionnaire. And I look at that thing and I said, this is too detailed. I said it to myself, this is too detailed. You know, you ask them, how do you train your continuous auditors? If you don't have continuous auditors, how can you train them? Correct? So it was very detailed. And so I kind of wiggled a little bit, because you're working with industry, you have to be careful what you do. And I said, well, let's call this a structured interview. And if the question doesn't go, I ask something else along that line. And so that's what we did, Siripan and me. We went to California, talked to some companies you know very well, etc., etc. And my prediction was correct. None of them were doing things at that level of detail. One of them was a company we actually were working with, which was Unibanco at that time. Now it's in Unibanco. And so we kind of interviewed, and in the process, we learned a lot of stuff that we were not looking for. But we organized this kind of flexible interviews. So as far as we are there and we are talking to them, even if they are not doing what we are looking for, we learn something. And that's how this thing came out. Other interesting thing about it is that we were building this maturity model that he said based on Rogers. I didn't know that it was based on Rogers, I can't remember that. But we disagreed from our partners at KPMG. So finish up, we wrote this paper, and they wrote a white paper that they published with a different maturity model. Okay? And you know, this is not what you learn about research methodology, but this is what the reality that happened. And this paper has been, you know, it's minor paper, quite cited, because people are very interested on the topic. We learned about this methodology of kind of flexible interviews, and we are now thinking about one of the radar things being on visualization being like that, a flexible interview. And you know, it's we just finished. I think I'm going to get Stanley to talk to you if he is talking. We just finished a survey with Caseware of what analytic methods people are using, and Stanley insisted on putting a TAM model on it, which I guess he wanted the conceptual part of it. But I thought it was very rigid, because it's one of these web-based questionnaires. I think you survey monthly or whatever we use there. And you know, people get tired of answering those things. And I like much more the flexible interviews that you go over there and talk with the companies. And so what we are thinking of doing with the visualization stuff is, you know, we have now these 8 firms that work with that support radar. It's not even big four, it's big 8 now. And I think we are going to go and interview each one of them and try to find out where they do visualization, where they would like to do visualization that they haven't done, where do they need the exceptions, and try to discover it that way by a soft interview. This is not what you learn in methodology, but if we had been rigid, we wouldn't have a paper. So it was interesting, and this is the kind of thing that you learn with years of experience. You know, at that time I had been academic for a long time, and when I saw the questionnaire they pulled together, I said, this is not going to work. So I wiggled into something that did work. We had actually several publications out of this. We had academic publication, and we had also have one in one of, I think the Isaac Journal or something, a popular publication. And on the other one, on the internal usage of technology, we also had a publication, although that was a very paid study. And finally, on the future of audit, we had 2 publications with Sylvia, with Danielle Lombardi, and now we are rewriting the future of audit in the terms that I like better, which is really futuristic. So I'm working with June Day, on this, and what we are trying to do is kind of use what she calls Industry 4.0, which is RFID and networking and etc., how auditing could be done in the future. And what I didn't like of the old study is that my experts were all my advisory board members. And these guys, the credentials are spectacular, meaning one was president of the ICPA and the big grand visionary, you've seen his name all around, Elliott, Bob Elliott. The other one was executive vice president of the ICPA. The third one is senior partner here. And you know, these credentials are fantastic. But I think that we were there in the CALAD meetings doing this questionnaire, and they basically thought about continuous auditing. It wasn't really, and then we called it Delphi. And we didn't really follow the Delphi methodology. Have you ever heard about the Delphi methodology? The Delphi methodology, first you know what Delphi is. Delphi is the Oracle of Delphi. And this is one of the famous Greek oracles. You would go there and they would tell you your future. And so the Delphi methodology is a methodology whereby you create a questionnaire. People answer it blindly, not knowing who the other people are answering. And then you share their answers and you see if this expert converge into a solution. So you can do with terminals that people are doing that, or you do week after week passing out questionnaires and etc. And we actually didn't have so many accesses to our expert, so we actually modified the methodology a little bit. And if you modify the methodology of a study, it's good because maybe it's better for you what you're trying to find out. But it's bad because you get creamed by the referees. You didn't use the traditional way of doing these things. I was telling you about our VPA study, the verbal protocol analysis that we have been doing, and we modified VPA methodology. You're going to, I think Helen is going to ask you to read the Biggs and Mock for next week. But the Biggs and Mock was traditional verbal protocol methodology, whereby people talk aloud, and then you capture what they said, and then you segment it into types of action, and etc., etc. And what we did, we instead of having one person talking aloud, we got a manager, and the manager participated with the partner and created discussion. So it didn't have to be forced to talk aloud, they were discussing it anyway. And now we are going to even perfect that more. But I can tell you in advance, we are going to have a huge hassle with our referees because we modified verbal protocol analysis to a different method. Now, I don't regret it. I think we did the right thing, and we are going to have a better paper. But it's going to take an extra year or two to get it accepted.